Okay, guys, so the recording has been started. Just give me 2 minutes. Last time we covered most of the topics, but the topics which are remaining are the Aryan theory of invasion. Is it a myth or a reality? And also, there are various factors which state that how did the Indus Valley civilization declined or how it came to an end. So I have jotted down those points. So like quickly, I will just recap over this, then we can begin the discussion. Just give me a couple of minutes. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the thing is, there's a theory, it's a very popular theory, as Bhargav said, that in 1953, Sir Mortimer Wheeler, he proposed this theory of the Indo-European tribe which invaded the Harappan civilization, and its origin can be traced through Central Asia, which he claimed. So there was one conclusive evidence through which he stated this that this might have took place. So this is mentioned in this slide that Aryans caused the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, which he cited that 37 skeletons were found in various parts of Mohenjo-daro. So that was the reason which he stated this theory. And yeah, also he said that during the Vedic time, so there were a few passages in Vedas which claim that there were few forts in that region and battles also took place, but there is not a conclusive evidence for that. But he tried to relate these two things, that Vedas as a literature and in terms of archaeology, these 37 skeletons. But the research was found that many scholars, they rejected this theory because the skeletons belong to a period after the city's abandonment, that when the Indus Valley civilization it declined, after that these skeletons were found. So later on, so this is just a claim. uh, Still the conclusive evidence is there, but these 2 points are there which contradict each other. And as we can say, if anyone has something to share over this, then it is true or false, we can state that. Okay, so this is the overview of Aryan invasion theory. It's very popular, and in one slide I have the reasons through which the Indus Valley civilization declined, but I guess we can discuss this later on at the end of our discussion. Okay, is it fine? So if anyone wants to add something, they can add over it. I'm stopping the screen. Okay.
Yeah, so actually the thing is not just Mortimer, even if you have heard of Max Miller's translation, translated by Max Miller, even they have many references to indicate that Aryan invasion theory actually happened. I mean, he has translated works and he has used lineages and bloodlines to show that how the Aryan invasion theory actually happened, and he has used language. So I'm not sure if the linguistic references are actually correct because Max Muller was originally a German. So I'm not sure how he could relate the Sanskrit linguistic references to indicate that Aryan invasion happened because their main argument is Indus Valley civilization, the entire thing, the decline of Indus Valley civilization, and after that he has arranged of wars which state that the invasions happened from European side. So from the European side, the invasions happened, and by using linguistic references and by using some of the textual references, he has stated that the invasion has indeed happened. Although there has been many debates since then, so it's not really conclusive as he said. But there are linguistic references, so we can maybe explore how he has used linguistic references. If anyone has a research paper of any kind, I mean, your thoughts on it. Do you think Sanskrit is an Indo-European language or it is purely Indian? That is my question to everyone in general.
Uh, okay. So I would like to weigh in over here. So the last question that you left us with, sorry, there's crackers around. So the last question that you left us with is whether Sanskrit, we consider Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language or a purely Indian language. My thought, so my initial thinking was that Sanskrit originated in India and then other languages bought off of it. But then the question remains, the kind of parallels that you find in the European languages and Sanskrit language, which we can like, so for north side of India, we can consider almost every language to be related in one way or another to Sanskrit. So the amount of parallels that we can find between, so mother and matra, brother and bhratra, so all that, people think that English borrowed this from Sanskrit, but it is improbable, because if that was the case, because English came much later, so if that was the case, what did they call mother before they knew Sanskrit? Matra. So it is pretty, I believe it is pretty sound to believe or to consider Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language, or we can consider the precursor of Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language, and the true Sanskrit, or rather the concrete Sanskrit that we now have, evolved when it came to India. Because as we all know, when the basic needs of humans are satisfied, clothing, food, and shelter. Only after that, intellectual contemplation start taking place. Grammatical structure of language. So, considering the kind of fertility and proper, if we consider Aryan invasion theory to be true, let's say they came from a very harsh area, because even the European areas are, in terms of India, they are harsh in terms of conditions, because there is only a limited type of agricultural produce you can get. Compared to that, India is an oasis. So once they settled over here, the language developed to what we know is the very complicated and intricate, one of the most intricate languages, Sanskrit. So I believe we can consider either Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language, or Sanskrit originated from an Indo-European language, and Sanskrit is the closest relative to that language, because other languages have gone far away from that pre pre-Sanskrit language. Maybe that is my two pence.
Yeah, right. But basically, then there should be traces. Like, for example, if you consider, like you said, a precursor of Sanskrit.
Right.
So, if you consider in the Indian subcontinent, the precursor of Sanskrit language is actually Tamilian, because Tamilian were considered to be the original Dravidian people.
Right.
Even the stories of Tamil people are quite different from the stories mentioned in the Vedas. Like, for example, if you consider Kartikeya, so
Mm.
in southern India, Kartikeya is called as Murugan or
Right.
Skanda. So
Right.
Murugan has a different kind of, you can say, background. I mean, it is essentially the same god, he's the son of Shiva, but then the
Yeah.
stories surrounding Murugan are quite different. So in
Right.
Sanskrit, I guess he's shown as the elder brother. Oh, sorry, yeah, in Vedas he's shown as the elder brother of Lord Ganpati, whereas in
Okay.
southern he's actually the younger brother.
Right.
So,
He's the
yeah.
Kumar. The younger. Yeah.
Yes, right, exactly. So, for linguistic references, as you said, the bhrata and the brother,
Mm.
mata and the yeah mother. So yeah, there should be some kind of vestiges of those languages in Sanskrit or of Sanskrit in those languages. So when we say Indo-European, it is basically
Right.
dealing with Persia and Arabs, because
Correct.
Europe, as in yeah, in that sense, Europe was not really the Europe we call today. So it was
Correct.
basically
Correct.
Persia and Arabian. So if anyone has any other references, like linguistic references.
That is exactly why I said, if we consider that to be the original language of the Indo-European languages today,
Right.
that is exactly why I said ki Sanskrit is its closest relative, and English and other languages are now, which we see as they are almost dead languages now, right? They are like sorry, Greek and Latin. So I would say maybe that is why we don't find so concrete vestiges in both the languages, and very what can we say, subtle vestiges in both the languages. So, for example, if we consider Sanskrit, we can consider Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language. If we consider Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language, then we can consider Sanskrit to be an Indo-European language. And very, 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 very two of people who diverted. And
Okay, I
India
guess
was
there
the
was an interruption in
Your
between.
yeah, your voice is not clearly audible. There are some interruptions.
Yeah, Nishant, there was some interruption in between.
okay. Was it
You
due
could
to
just repeat the last two, three sentences.
crackers? So
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. The net is a little dicey here,
Yeah, okay,
so
sure.
there might be some. I can't really help it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, so basically what
Yes, so entire point is the same, right? So if if let's say if Tamil predates Sanskrit, and the question also remains, so we call it invasion. I wanted to raise this point. We call it the Aryan invasion theory, and when the moment you say invasion, you imagine Khilji coming and looting the places, Shivaji Maharaj going inside Surat and looting the area. So invasion is a very harsh word, and it comes into context when there is a very well established defined border system. We are considering times when not even the Indus civilization is in place. So they are very nomadic times, and at that time I don't think it would have been a true invasion. It would have been a migration, because population was not so much कि we would call it like these people came and dominated this area so much that these people were driven down. I believe the majority of Dravidian population was downsides, like southern India, because India as a landscape is so huge, and we are talking about time when population burst was not a thing. We are talking about times when living conditions were very harsh and nomadic.
right.
So it is debatable how much influence Tamil and Sanskrit might have had on each other, because considering how much difficulty it would have been to cross over in case of the languages. I don't know if I'm making sense. I've not read much about it. It is just an opinion.
Yeah, actually, the thing is, the word invasion actually comes from the actual invasion that they are referring to. So if you read the Aryan invasion entire context, so what they're referring
Right.
to invasion is, they propose that initially in the Indian subcontinent, there were Dravidians who were the original natives or the indigenous people of the continent. And those were the Dravidians who actually lived in the Indus Valley sites like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Rakhigarh, etc., etc.
Okay.
Those were actually the Dravidians. And then what happened was, due to the, you can say maybe Saraswati or Indus, most of the time it's referred to as Saraswati. So there was an,
Right.
you can say drought or some kind of thing, or the course of Saraswati was changed. So due to this changing of the course, there was not enough water resources. So the Dravidians had to move downwards towards the southern side. So during that time, they claim
Right.
that it was an invasion from the European side, from the northern borders, like from the Hindu Kush mountains. And from that side
Correct.
was a tribe of people who they refer as Aryans. And the Aryans actually invaded these lands, they invaded these cities, and then they established the entire concept of Hinduism. So those were the people who introduced the concept of Vedas. They established the concept of casteism, and they, you can say, promulgated the entire area, and they made the tribals, which were the Dravidians, follow this caste system. Hence, they call it as an invasion. And they made other people, I mean,
Acha.
Dravidians itself were invaded by the Aryans. Hence, the term invasion. So, this is what their claim is. But
Also,
yeah, I guess
so
Ruchika wants to
in
say
this
something.
Yeah.
case, yeah,
Yeah,
Ruchika.
yeah, Ruchika, you can go ahead.
Well, can you hear? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, you're audible, but there is some disruption in the network.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So, as for now, I have a little bit idea about what the Aryan is, but what I know about Dravidians is that they belong to the southern part. They are the they belong to the indigenous tribes of the India, but don't know the exact Dravidi culture, like whom they like. What we can say that to whom they pray and what they do. Like we are getting to introduce to Aryan culture from the Indus Valley civilization, but I didn't find any kind of Dravidi culture. So can you please tell us about the Dravidians?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing in it. Like we were discussing, the population of Indian subcontinent was only 3 to 6 million at that time, and the major Harappan sites, which were Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and other three major cities. So the population was only 30,000 to 60,000 people. So Indian subcontinent and the Harappan civilization during the Bronze Age, the time of the Indus Valley civilization is 3300 BCE to 1700 BCE. So yeah, so and we were also discussing regarding the Sanskrit language. So the thing which I wanted to share is before Sanskrit language, Sanskrit grammar is much older than Vedas. So if you guys have referred Panini's Ashtadhyayi and the roots and conjugations in it, so everything is before the Vedas. So this is very old, and yes, definitely we see a lot of similarities between the few European languages such as German and Sanskrit. So, and one more thing is like the North India, if we refer
Tamil
historically,
is older than Sanskrit.
Yeah, Gayatri, you can go ahead.
Yeah, somewhere I read that Tamil is much older than Sanskrit, right? Voice
There's
is
a
not
little,
audible.
yeah, your voice is not.
Yes. Yeah. So I think she was saying that Tamil is older than Sanskrit.
Oh, right,
And
right.
yeah, there are some
Yeah.
proofs to support that.
Yeah, definitely. So Tamil is older language than Sanskrit, and there are also basic structural references in the languages. Like for example, as Vaibhav said, I have to disagree on one point. You were trying to say that the Vedas basically and the Sanskrit that we use today, so that is predating the Vedas. So, but actually the thing is, the Sanskrit language itself starts from Vedic culture. I mean, if you refer to the Vedic scripts, they are written in chandas, and the chandas have certain structure. So like chandas have each chanda has a particular syllable. So if you have read ever the Sartha Sandhya, I guess many of the people know about Sandhya.
yeah,
So in Sandhya there is an entire shlok, Gayatrishni Kanushtub, Brahati Pankti Trishtub, Jagatyash Chandansi. So this shlok actually refers 7 kinds of chandas: Gayatri, Ushni, Anushtup, Brahati, Pankti, Trishtub, Brahati. And all these 7 chandas have certain characteristics. Like for example, if you are saying the Gayatri Shlok, it has 24 syllables because it is written in Gayatri Chanda. So Gayatri Chanda has 24 syllables, Anushtup Chanda has 32 syllables, and so on. So if you try to manipulate the Chanda, like for example, in the Gayatri Shlok, you try to add an extra syllable, it doesn't fit into the meter, it doesn't fit into the Chanda, and the manipulation can be easily detected. So all our Vedas are actually written in chandas, and not just chandas; they're also written in the tonations. Like for example, if you want to say a high tone, there is an anudatta tone, and for lower one there is a udatta tone. So like Shanno, Devi, Ravishtha, yeah. So this was the method. So it might not be possible that the Sanskrit language predated the Vedic scriptures. So I guess Vedic scriptures and Sanskrit language evolved simultaneously. It was a vernacular language, but even the language for texts.
Maybe Vaibhav, I think Vaibhav is pointing out the
Sanskrit
fact.
grammar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
grammar.
think
Yeah,
Vaibhav
that's
is relating to the fact Sanskrit grammar predates the written Vedas, because
Yeah,
as we know that Vedas were prevalent as spoken way, through the spoken way rather than the written way much before. Same is the case with Purans and almost all the scriptures. They were spoken much before than they were written down, penned down. So, yeah, we can say that the Vedic literature and the Sanskrit grammatical structures evolved simultaneously, but then we would be referring to the Vedic spoken literature and not the written literature, which would have
yes,
come
right.
very much late
Yes, of course.
after there was a conscious establishment of chandas.
Yeah, so
Then, after that,
exactly. So documented records, you're talking about the documentation part at Vaibhav.
exactly.
Okay, so
yeah,
that's true. Yeah, that's true. But regarding the modulations and all those things, or rather the Gita form of the Vedas, so that is during the oral tradition, and there were 8 kinds of patha. So if you consider the patha system,
Ashtadhyayi.
Ashtadhya. So there were 8 kinds of patha system. So
Yeah.
so these pathas were basically for oral transmission, and in order to avoid any transmission loss. Like for example, we are discussing this, and there are 9 people. So let's say Vaibhav is giving an X amount of information, and I am grasping only 90% of it. Rather, I will remember only 90% of it. Others can remember like 95, 97%. There is some kind of a transmission loss between the teacher and the student.
Correct.
In order to avoid this transmission loss, there was a method of repetition, Patha system. And that was basically to reduce that transmission loss so that the student or you can say the Patha, which is recited by the student, is an exact replica of what the statements are, so that there is no transmission loss or no case of manipulation. So,
Right.
yeah, so that is why spoken Sanskrit and grammar evolved simultaneously. But yes, the documentation part evolved much later when the writing systems were invented.
Also, before we go to the next topic, I think we missed Ruchika's question. Like,
Yeah,
she
yeah,
asked
right.
something and we didn't
Yeah, so
elaborate on that.
Ruchika, your question was regarding Tamilian culture, right? I mean,
I think she wanted more information about Dravidians, right, Ruchika?
right. So yeah,
Who were the
Dravidians.
Dravidians?
Yeah, so Dravidians basically, if you okay. So by Dravidians, so archaeological as well as historical researchers mention that Dravidians were actually the indigenous people of India. So basically, say the Tamil language. So Tamil does predate Sanskrit, and Tamil languages is actually one of the oldest language in the Indian subcontinent. And so the thing is, it might be possible that you can say when the tribes started evolving and they started speaking, those original indigenous villages were from Tamilian culture. I mean, their language was Tamil, the vernacular Tamil. And then maybe Sanskrit was evolved later due to the mixture of northern language and Tamil language. So basically, Dravidians were the indigenous people, and even though their faiths were quite similar to the northern people, they were the real people of the land. And later, I will cite a research paper which actually even shows evolutionary theory. So we'll get to that later. Dravidians, just remember, they were the indigenous people of ancient India who spoke Tamil language because it predates Sanskrit.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to add to this, like when we refer South India in modern times, it's Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh. But there are still few villages. Even today, they speak Sanskrit. So, like, how is it that? Because there are many words and similarities also observed between this. But one thing is there that North Indian classical music and South Indian music, like most of the part is similar, but they differ slightly. But one thing which I observe is that there is some relation and contact between the North Indians and South India. And if you refer geographically, like above Madhya Pradesh or above the Vindhya ranges of Maharashtra, Satpura and Vindhyas, so this is North Indian plain. And after crossing Madhya Pradesh, a person can directly reach up till Nepal to Nepal from northeast and up till northwest easily. The geographical part is similar to the Afghanistan or Hindu Kush ranges. So people have traveled and migrated from this path. But yes, definitely migration is seen a lot in North India compared to southern parts of India.
Yeah, so I would like to add to this. So I recently came across a paper. I think I can share it on the group, which suggests that when Africans moved out of the continent of Africa, they went in all possible directions, and they settled in a place where stable food was available. So the Central Asian plain, it is not very good for living a life. Okay, it doesn't have a lot of rivers, it doesn't have a lot of trees, it is kind of a mountain terrain, so it is not a very great place to live. So one theory goes like, people traveled from Africa to the subcontinent of India, and when they came here, uh, they started developing culture, they started settling down in the Indus Valley. That's why we find major ancient civilizations very close to the northern side. So it is right on the path from Africa to India. So the place where they found the most fertile land, they started settling there. And one theory suggests that all the languages and culture were formed in India, and then they migrated to Central Asia and Western Europe.
Uh, yeah, so this is where Prayag. Just to clear one thing before I
Mhm.
put my actual question, this might sound a bit dumb, but
Yeah.
this is all happening after the Indian plate merged into the Asian plate, right?
Yeah,
Or
definitely. That happened
so
even before. I mean,
this was a
Indian
long time before
subcontinent.
even nano.
Yeah, Indian subcontinent merged with Asian subcontinent even when dinosaurs were present.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
continental drift is
yeah,
like way
continental
long
drift
back.
is
Way
right.
long back.
So now
yeah.
talking about this, if we consider the origin of humans to be in Africa,
Hmm.
and considering Africa is totally cut off from India by water, there is no land route to Africa in India,
No,
There
there
is.
is land route. There are two
which
land routes.
So there is a strait of I don't exactly know the name, but there is a linkage between Africa and Asia near Egypt. So Egypt and Israel share a border between Asia and Africa.
oh right. Yes, I
Yeah.
remember.
So if you see the Red Sea thing,
Strait of
above the Red
Hormuz,
Sea,
I guess.
where Alexandria of Egypt was established, from there you can enter into India through the southern route. So that was one of the route, and you can also enter India through the northern route. So that was considered as the northern exit and the southern exit. So,
Right.
so evolution actually happened from Africa, which is known today, and there are many gene samples which dictate that. Because we have actually found skulls in Israel, which date back almost, I guess, about
Yes, so
100,000 years.
that was one more point which I wanted to say about the genetics. So if the genetics of Western Europeans and Indians are compared, there is a 60% match in the what they say is mitochondria DNA. I don't exactly know what that is. I'm not a medical professional or anything, so I don't know exactly what that means. But what they conclude is the languages, the development of Indo-European languages it happened after the genes were transferred. So the languages have to be originate from one place. They originated from the Indian subcontinent. That is a standing theory that no one came with all the culture from outside. They developed it here and then they went outside. I will.
What were you saying about mitochondrial DNA?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what was
I
the
will tell you the exact name of. So it is
No, I
actually a
skipped that
gene
point.
mapping. Hmm. It is a gene
I
mapping.
actually,
I
yeah,
can't hear you.
yeah.
Can you put your question in the chat? I'm not able to hear
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
No.
Right now, am I
Just
audible?
yeah.
Your voice is getting interrupted.
Actually, I was
So
asking, what were you talking about mitochondrial DNA? I skipped that point actually.
yeah. So the research suggests that 60% there is a 60% match in the DNA from the mitochondria of human cells in India and in Western Europe. So which suggests that there has to be a common ancestry. Okay, and
But
in
actually, yeah,
yeah, so according to their
I,
research, they can even date the propagation of genes. So they can know when these genes were transferred from one person to another or from one civilization to another. And from that, they find that even the earliest evidences of language were found after the transfer of genes.
Yeah, since Bhargav has just shared the screen, I just wanted to add one point. Like we were discussing the connection between the continent of Africa and Asia. So it's the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. So which connects these two. And one more thing I just wanted to add, like considering the previous discussion, that in North India, so there was a Sikh empire, the Sikh empire of Rana Ranjit Singh. So it consisted of Afghanistan, Pakistan and Kashmir. And if you even trace the empire of Kush, so it is Kashmir and the Central Asia. So migration is very common. So
Yes,
common in North
and
Indian region.
one more example of that is, have you guys heard about Roma people, the indigenous people of Romania? I mean, they are not indigenous to Romania, but they settled there. The racial slang which is used in many popular American as well as British shows is gypsies. Have you heard about
Right.
the term?
Of course,
Yeah.
of course.
So they,
Yeah.
yeah. So so they originated from northern India, the plains of Haryana and the states of Haryana, Punjab, and there was a single group of 500 people who left the Indian subcontinent because of the caste system and because of the persecution they faced here, and they migrated westwards, and they finally settled in Romania, which is
Oh.
just outside the Central Asian plain.
Yeah,
And
right.
now the Romanian people are they remarried the locals, and now the Romanian people have finally been concluded to have their origins in India, especially
Okay.
Punjab and Haryana. So
Oh,
that
nice.
happened 1,000 years ago.
Mhm.
Okay, so that migration was just 1,000 years ago. But similarly, there were other migrations. That's the
Hominin,
working theory.
yeah,
Yeah.
hominin out of Africa. So if you consider
Yes.
the red patch on the screen, this is where the Homo sapiens actually started migrating outside. So huge group of Homo sapiens took this route. So if you see the pointer on the screen, this is the Red Sea, and at this was considered as the northern exit. So they went into the north, and from there was another group which went towards the south. So these people might have inhabited the Indian subcontinent, even though they were from Africa. They were out from Africa. These might have inhabited this area, and there are even references. Like for example, let me just switch the thing. There's a research paper. Can you see the screen? The
Yeah.
research paper.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so it talks about India at the crossroads of human evolution. So they have even mentioned some of the species, like in the Shivalik forests in the north, there was certain species of early hominins. They've even named it as Shivapithecus, literally on the name of Shiva, Shivapithecus. And there were others as well. So there was indeed a migration from Africa into the Indian subcontinent. They settled over there, but there were certain volcanic, you can say, activities because of which that entire civilization was wiped out because of the volcanic activity. So there are some evidences which say that there was indeed an migration from Africa into India, and that is why the languages started differing. So we have Persian dialect, we have Arabian dialect. So yeah, basically many things happened.
Bhargav, one quick question. Can you please show that diagram once again? Yeah. So the thing is, like, if we see any kind of a invasion or a migration, so it is from north as seen in this paper, but as we see that the Indian peninsula is exposed in Indian Ocean. So why like Africans could have took a easy route through sea? Just consider this analogy that Africans could have migrated to the southern part of India, like Kerala or Tamil Nadu, rather than
I
going
think
through a
that is
long route.
very.
No,
I
no.
think that is very
Yeah,
unlikely because.
these are Homo erectus people. Like
Yeah.
these are not These are not even tribals. They don't
Yeah,
have
they
the
are not
technology of
really
rafts.
proper
They're
humans yet.
Yeah,
just
having
migrating.
ships sail into open oceans, I don't think they had that kind of technology.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
least we haven't found any shipwrecks. We would
Mm.
have found that because we
Even
found similar
not
shipwrecks
yeah,
in
even
the
not talking about
Norse culture.
Mm.
Yeah.
And you can see they
right.
spread all the way up to American subcontinent, North America and South America. So this
So the Vikings had the first
migration.
And
real command over the ships,
Mm.
and we know that because we find shipwrecks in the seas. We find their cultural signatures in the Canadian part of the North America. So that's how we know that they had ships. The
right.
earliest mentions of ships in India could be just 5 to 6,000 years ago.
Mm. Right.
And
So yeah, yeah. Nishant, you wanted to say something? Yeah, so
Nice.
basically the reason I have shared this screen is regarding the Aryan invasion theory. So they are saying that the Indo-European people, or rather, European tribe migrated into India. They invaded the Indian cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and then the entire invasion theory was formed on this proposition. But the thing is, they are trying to Europeanize all the cultures of India. So that is basically what Aryan invasion theory stood for. That Sanskrit has Indo-European origin. Yeah, I guess two
Two
participants are.
participants.
Yeah, yeah, you can ask it.
Yeah, so one more thing, adding to Vaibhav's question and Prayag's answer about why didn't they take the sea route? We were like, one thing is there that we are talking about Homo erectus. It is not even a Homo sapien yet. That is a very important factor. And secondly, even if we consider, let's say there is the enough intelligence to develop a ship or something, even then we have to consider this is so primitive a species. This is very close to a wild species, like any animal, than the civilized human. And so in any animal, the first instinct is of survival. So the fear of fire and the fear of something that is open water. So sea is an open water and completely uncharted territory. So while considering migrations, we, yes, crash sites and excavation sites are important facts, are important objective evidences, but we also have to postulate the psychological, uh, what can we say, psychological phenomenon that could have existed back then. Because you throw a tiger near a beach, it will not go and swim into the sea immediately. It will stick to the land. So that is also a concept. Like, so because people chose to settle near the rivers and not the seas, because the river still offers you the psychological comfort that you're close to land where you
Yeah.
belong, you're a human. The sea does not offer you that psychological comfort. And psychology is deeply rooted in natural instincts, the instinct of fear and the instinct of desire. So while we discuss this is a very important fact to consider, I believe.
Yeah, I have a second question to this. Like considering the languages, like if Africans have migrated over here, but yeah, as we know that this is Homo erectus, and we are talking about a period which is in thousands of years ago, but we don't see any similarity between present day African languages and that of our North Indian languages. But there's a similarity between the Central Asia or Turkish words or like Arabic and few
Yeah.
European languages as well. So
Can I? Okay, so
yeah,
I think this can be supported by, rather, this can be answered by what Prayag just said, that the migrations took place much before the
much
evolution of
before.
languages. So if that is the case, the languages started developing because, again, we are talking about Africa to India migration when they were Homo erectus, when there was there was not that kind of a supreme intelligence. There was curiosity, which was much bigger in humans, rather Homo erectus, against all the other animals, because we tend to be more curious even if it sometimes go against our natural instincts. So that kind of intelligence might be there, but the intelligence to actually develop a coordinated grammatical language might not be there in existence during the migration of Africa to India, or like, the first original human migrations. But later, when we are talking about Indo-European migrations, I think they come in a much more sophisticated period, like sophisticated as in compared to the Homo erectus period. So in that case, you will of course find similarities, right?
Okay.
Because
Exactly, because yeah, this diagram that I showed you, that was about evolution of human species all over the entire world. That was not Aryan invasion theory.
exactly,
It
exactly.
comes
Yeah.
much later. This
Yeah,
was
it comes when civilizations like Indus and Harappa are there, which
yeah,
is nowhere
exactly.
close to the
No,
African
not at all.
migration.
African migration is literally the migration of humans itself.
Humans, not a tribe or
Yeah,
anything. It's a human as a
exactly.
species. Just like we
Yeah,
discussed how tigers spread through India, how leopards evolved throughout India, it is same thing. We cannot consider a civilization defined by our
yeah,
parameters.
exactly. They were just no, yeah, they were just groups of the. There were two tribes basically. Some of them in Africa, while others migrated away. They have migrated all the way to the American continent as well. Like if you see the route, the red
Through
lines.
Russia.
Yeah, So northern exit and southern exit. But now the thing is, there is an interesting research which is coming, which has just arrived in 2019. So the research suggests that before this out of Africa route, some of the DNA sequences which are present in the Nicobar people, so those DNA sequences are actually in the same time frame of African people. So there might be a possibility that before this African migration, there was some kind of a civilization, not civilization, there was some kind of hominins which are actually present in Indian subcontinent. And so the all that we see today might not be entirely the result of out of Africa. There might have been simultaneous evolutions all the way across the world.
Right.
Yeah, so this is an interesting research that has been done on DNA sequences in Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So they have another species, not exactly the species. They have the DNA sequence of just another set of individuals. Like we are Homo sapiens, then they are Neanderthals, and there is another species which can be detected in Andaman and Nicobar, and that is unknown. That is still unknown. Where does that come from? So they are trying to relate it to the Narmada Basin. So there have been many papers which suggest Narmada Basin was actually a home of many of the indigenous hominins, not just from Africa, but even in Narmada, there was a simultaneous Narmada Basin. There we have found skeletons of hominins, Australopithecus, Sivopithecus. So these are basically in the early hominin periods. So out of Africa is of course a plausible theory, but there have been certain, you can say, researches which are done.
So Narmada Parikrama is a very old thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it is really old tradition. Maybe they're really, yeah, Narmada.
Yeah.
I was about to say the same thing. I guess Ruchika has raised her
Yeah,
hand.
raised a hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ruchika, you can ask a question if you want, because your hand is raised for a long time.
Yeah. Anyone can add
Well, I was
anything in between.
typing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was typing in the chat, but you called me, so I'm asking here. I'm thinking that I'm audible to all.
Yeah.
If not, then please convey it to me.
Yeah, you are audible.
Well, my question was that when India was separated from Africa, was Sri Lanka actually separated from India, or it get separated after the partition of India from Africa?
You're
Yes.
talking about the drifting thing, right? Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so you're correct. There were three parts of the Indian subcontinent which separated from Africa, and now there are three different. They are three different islands, we can say. So one is the Madagascar, which was which is right off the coast of Africa, and then the Indian subcontinent traveled all the way to Asia. And as you said, Sri Lanka was separated at the very end. There are also many scatterings in between. The Seychelles mountains, not mountains, the Seychelles islands, then Mauritius, Maldives, Lakshadweep, all of them came from the Indian subcontinent itself. So yes, you are correct. They were separated long before. This is millions of years ago, where there was no trace of humans. Even dinosaurs weren't roaming Earth. Yeah.
Okay, so my second question was based on the first question. So my second question is that I hope I'm audible.
Yeah.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I was asking that as we know that the southern part of India have the most of the Dravidian population, and also I think the Sri Lankans are also Dravidians. So how the Sinhalese culture differs from the Dravidi culture present in the southern India?
Which culture? Can you say the names of two?
Sinhalese culture.
I can just
Sinhalese.
yeah, maybe I
Yeah,
can answer
okay.
your question. The thing is, they only differ today. Like previously, as far as the religion is concerned, so they are Dravidian. Music in southern part of India, like if you compare from Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra, and that of the Sri Lanka. So even in Sri Lanka, like half of the Sri Lanka is Tamilian, and sorry, not half of that, but like maybe 30 to 40% of they are Tamilians, and maximum of them are Sinhala. So it is more of a Buddhist kind of a culture, And yeah, this is the thing,
Right.
because missionaries were
Because-
sent from India. The
Right.
only difference,
Yes.
because music is same, their food, diet, everything is same, but the thing is, like, Tamilians are Hindus, and Sinhala is a Buddhist tribe. And one more thing to support my argument, I just wanted to add that, Ruchika, if you just see the description of the Sri Lankan flag, so all the symbols are present over there. The lion represents the Sinhala tribe, and the saffron is the represents the Tamilian. So, and even in that Sinhala portion, all the Buddhist inscriptions are there, so which tends towards Buddhism. So I feel only religion is the factor which distinguishes. Rest, everything is similar. Tamilians and Sinhalas. This is what
Yeah,
I feel. Yeah.
to an extent, yes.
Yeah.
Well, one more thing, that as far as I know, that the Buddhism was spread over the Sri Lanka through the Ashoka's children. That was the Theravada Buddhism.
Yeah,
But,
Mahendra was the one who spread
most
the
of
Buddhism.
yeah. Mahendra and Sanghamitra were there. But many were there. I think that the Tamilian Brahmins in Sri Lanka, and most of the Buddhists also, don't call themselves as Theravada Buddhists. They devote the what we can say, yeah, they devote Gautam Buddha as the avatar of Vishnu.
Vishnu.
So, and as we all know that the Aryans, sort of who take the culture over the Dravidians. Correct me if I'm wrong. So, how the Hindu culture was over Sri Lanka, because Buddhism.
Yeah, so basically, so you mentioned it right. So southern India does not recognize Buddha as the ninth avatar of Vishnu. Yeah, so there are many stories in southern India which do not include Buddha. They include Balram and Krishna as the eighth and the
Right.
and basically in the north they consider Buddha as the ninth avatar, because the thing is Buddha himself never went to the southern India. So that is why
Yeah.
Sri Lanka or the southern part never actually had any influence of Buddhism before Ashoka. It was basically in the northern states, rather even
Also,
or China,
right.
but not
Also,
really in southern India.
I believe the fact that in northern India, it is very prevalent to include Buddha as the ninth avatar of Lord Narayan. That might be because by the time Gautam Buddha, Siddhartha Gautam came into picture, the caste system had become very oppressive. Like the caste system had started shifting from caste system to casteism. So the words are similar, but they are hugely different. So Buddha kind of provided a respite, like he provided a new way of life. Just like Krishna in his time, he destroyed an entire generation so that a fresh system could be established. Buddha didn't destroy a system, but he created a very new system. So I believe that is why people might have felt, because in Bhagavad Gita, very contradictory to the film Oh My God, where Krishna says, I didn't create castes, I only created human. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I created the castes and I never asked any returns for that deed. But anyway, in Bhagavad Gita, he says, I established the caste system. So maybe Buddha is like, completing the work of Krishna. Like one system is now redundant and we need to now introduce something fresh so that the civilization can keep on moving. So maybe that is how Buddha got inculcated into the Vishnu lore. Because if you see the core principles of Buddhism, forget the now developed part, but core principles of Buddhism include the philosophy of no God. It includes the philosophy of oneness of universe, but there is no
Yeah.
singular entity that Buddha says worship. So there is no concept of worship actually in Buddhism.
Buddhism,
So maybe that is,
so Buddhism is included in Hinduism, but it is
yeah,
considered to be an atheistic school like Jainism, Buddhism,
Agnostic.
agnostic. Or,
Yeah,
yeah,
Buddhism is
agnostic,
agnostic.
exactly, not
yes.
atheistic. So
Right.
yeah, what happened was, as Nishan said it correctly, Buddha actually created a new sect which was kind of anti-Vedic period, because the thing is, as it had become really, you can say, imposing, or you can say restrictive. So that is why he created an entirely new system, and
Correct.
that's why he's incorporated in the northern culture but not in the southern culture. And
Because that system never reached the southern culture when
southern
Buddha
culture.
was alive.
But Buddhism basically works on the philosophy of Zen. So if you have discussed this the last time, so Zen, this word itself is a mispronunciation of the word dhyan, which is Sanskrit. So Buddha made the first mispronunciation. He pronounced it as jhana. And in the Japan, or the, you can say, Tibet and Chinese regions, they made mispronunciation of that mispronunciation. They pronounced it, Chinese said it as Chan, and later it got transformed into Zen.
Then,
So that is why Zen philosophy itself arises from the concept of dhyan, meditation. So that is,
also,
yeah,
do you feel to an extent, like I know Buddha, installed a system which went out of the caste system. There were no divisions
yeah,
based on labor or birth in no way.
exactly,
Everyone
exactly.
was, but he went into the philosophy of no worship, right? So if we look at the Vedic era, there is not worship per se. There is more focus on yajna.
Hmm.
So maybe he didn't
He
completely
opposed
abandon
yoga.
the Vedic system. Maybe he
Exactly.
reformed it to such an extent that people thought ki this is a completely new system. But he actually just introduced it in a very different and very fresh way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
forego all the rituals told in the Vedas, just focus on the philosophy of Vedas.
Hmm.
Don't even follow the rituals of the Vedas or the Purana.
Yeah, so he was basically against the ritual system itself. Be-
Right.
Because
Because people had started
huh,
losing the sight of rituals. That
perfect.
yeah, like it was like exams, what has happened right now with exams. So exam, the prime purpose is to check whether you know or not, so that you don't have to give a test everywhere you go. You have a one standard test. But now it has become about marks. So it has become about the objective result rather than the
Exactly.
subjective evaluation.
So he
So I think Buddha was
kind of he
trying
was trying to do undoing the Macaulay system
to,
similar.
right.
One
Right.
one
Exactly.
yeah, one more thing I just wanted to add to this argument: the system which Buddha created. So there was a sangha, and in that sangha, the followers of Buddhas, like they were bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. So men and women were equal,
Right.
and even if you see the Panchashil of Buddhism, so the values, the Vedic values, even same, they're absorbed over here. Like Buddha focuses more over karuna, uh, yeah, compassion, then
Right.
satya, asteya, ahimsa. So these principles are there. Like these are the values which we have, but this knowledge is spread everywhere. And since we are discussing the languages of the southern part, if you see the Theravada Buddhism, which is present in Sri Lanka, or in Cambodia, or those regions, so the work is in Pali language. Pali, Maithili, Ardhamagadhi, these languages are similar to Sanskrit, so which is North Indian, so which we can see over here. And rituals are not present in this kind of Buddhism, but if you observe the rituals of the Dalai Lama, like I happened to visit at the Dalai Lama monastery, and in Tibetan Buddhism, uh, there are a lot of rituals, so which we can see, like if you observe these monks, so there are a lot of rituals. And even you can see the idols. There are many idols which are observed over there, like there are demons, there are gods, goddesses.
Right.
So there's a
Uh,
contradiction between what we see over here. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I have 2 points. One is what we are talking about right now, Buddhism, is the fact that about the idol worship. It came in much later with the concept of Bodhisattva, which is a little farther than Buddha himself. And second, so when talking about idol worship, I don't think it is the core value of Buddhism. It has evolved. I'm not saying it's wrong. It
No,
is
it is
just a
not at
core.
all. Idolatry was completely Buddha himself was against idolatry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the second point is, I think we should, get back a little towards Aryan invasion theory.
Yeah, right, right. I
I
guess
think,
Ruchika raised a hand regarding the same thing.
yeah, after the recording, we can,
Yeah, sure.
go back into our usual
Yeah, right,
discussions.
right.
Right now, let's focus. So about the
Okay.
Aryan invasion theory,
Yeah,
Then,
I was saying
yeah,
the same thing that we should get back to the Aryan invasion.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
regarding Aryan invasion, I thought about another point. So when
Mm,
this actual invasion, should be some kind of a battle or a war between the tribes or the cities. But if you actually look at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, you do not find any kind of vestiges or evidences where there was a war or there was a battle in the past. All the sites of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are free from any kind of battle strategies. In fact, they did not even have a military. So it is not
okay,
possible that there was an actual invasion because even
right.
themselves, they are not burned, or they are not pillaged, they were not ravaged. There was,
Okay, but here,
yeah,
um, uh, before I put my point in lieu with yours,
okay.
just I want to clarify one thing. When we talk about Aryan invasion theory, do we talk about that happening when Harappan cities were established, or was it before the Harappan cities were
It was
established?
actually after
After,
Harappan cities were
Okay,
established.
after.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
there was
then there should
Mohenjo-daro.
be something like a war
Yeah,
happening, because if there was a
but
proper city.
exactly, if the invasion happened, so the city should be looted or the city should be devastated, demolished, something.
Yeah, and the city was well connected with others in the area. I mean, all
Exactly.
the way up to Gujarat. So
Yeah,
if there was some kind of invasion, we could have had some kind of,
reinforcements.
yeah,
yeah, even
not,
North
not just
Maharashtra.
reinforcement, just mentions, even mentions of it
Yeah, exactly.
have been
So,
possible.
in this case, I think uh, when we say like this, so let's take the example of Mughal invaders. So typically, yeah, they destroyed most of the traditional Indian structures, architectural structures, but the ones that they really liked, they reconstructed upon it, right? There is the
Hmm.
controversy of Taj Mahal, but
Hmm.
let's say that it is a real thing. There was a
Okay.
Tejo Mahal and they made a Taj Mahal out of it.
Yeah, right.
Maybe Taj Mahal is not a real thing, but there are many monuments which are originally core Indian and Mughals
Hmm.
later
Right.
just sculpted more upon it.
Right.
So considering the time of Harappa, when again we are talking about a very less population, very less documentation as compared to the Mughal time. So if the Aryans did invade and they drove the Dravidians out, and they were these high core thing that Dravidians are so outside their system. Okay, Prag. So Dravidians are so out of their caste system. Like I had read this somewhere that the Dravidians were not even considered as Shudras. They were literally outside the caste system. Uh, so I'll follow up that point in a bit. So anyway, if we consider that, then I think the Aryans would take each and every measure to cover up any Dravidian trace. So there would, and considering how long the Harappan civilizations were, we are talking about battles that were fought with, maybe swords might have been a luxury back then.
Exactly.
Like right
Mostly
now,
spears or you can say
yeah,
stones or anything like
perishable
that.
weapons basically,
Yeah.
less metal and more perishable
Hmm.
material use. So that is very difficult that you will find a war evidence or even a mention, because if the Aryans completely controlled that area after the Dravidians were thrown out, I don't think they will bother keeping any evidence, because then they wanted to establish it as their original land, right? Like
Okay. Right.
they wanted to
So
establish it like
yeah,
that.
sure.
I just
So
wanted to add 2 points into this. The first point is, like, if you observe, like, yeah. So the thing is, like, the caste system. So it is there in the southern part of India. Like, if you see Tamil Brahmins and all kind of the thing which we follow, and the thing which I've observed is in southern states, people are more inclined towards religion and religious values rather than North India or Maharashtra. So this is the observation which I have made. And one more thing I just wanted to add, like, is everyone familiar with the Dharma Peeths and the concept of Adi Shankaracharya?
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so Shankaracharya, to protect Hinduism, so what he did was, so he established 4 Dharma Peeths. So the first is in Shrungeri, Kumbhakonam, Varanasi, and there's one thing which is in north. So 2 Dharma Peeths are in south, And if you see the Vedas and Upanishads, which we learn, the traditional Vedic Pathshalas, so whatever Vedas and all those chandas, which Bhargav has explained very beautifully, so they are taught in a similar way in the Indian subcontinent, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. So if we
Right.
agree that there is a Aryan and the Dravidian, so why Dravidians are more inclined towards Hinduism and Vedic religions? Because
Why is there
today,
so much uniformity?
yeah, because even still today, South Indians are more religious people than in Maharashtrians and the North India.
I think almost entire India is more religious than Maharashtrians.
Yeah. And even the
Yeah.
North. Yeah.
But South
So,
Indians
I was
are not.
about to ask this question.
so basically, I guess,
Just a second, Bhargav.
yeah.
Before we follow up, I just want to put one mention about the point that I mentioned earlier, the Dravidians
Okay.
and the caste system.
Right,
So
right.
I was recently reading Arthashastra by
Hmm.
Chanakya, and so I'm correlating two things that I read. So for this for the Chanakya thing, I can cite the reference, I can show you the book. But the part that I read, that the Dravidians were not even part of the caste system, they were
Hmm.
truly slaves if there were any captives of war. So in Chanakya's Arthashastra, the edition that I was reading, I'll send you the photo. I have a hard copy, I don't have a soft copy. Uh, it is mentioned. So we think that the Shudra is the lowest post in the societal structure of Chanakya. But in that, it is given if you have a servant. So for example, I have a servant is a Shudra, right? And we see a tradition that the king's son becomes the king, the Shudra's son becomes the Shudra. And especially in case of servants' children become the servants to the same master that their father was the servant to. But in the Arthashastra, it is given that because the Shudra is still an Arya. And then, so Arya, because that was the term prevalent for the civilized man by Chanakya's time.
Aryavarta.
Aryavarta, right. So Chanakya says that an Arya is born free. So irrespective of who he is born to, he cannot be claimed at birth unless he chooses to go into slavery. But in contrast to that, I don't remember the exact terms used for the people outside of this Varna system. But these people, if they are the slaves, they are truly the property of their masters. And even a child born will be a property of that master. So a Shudra is still treated as an Aryan. So it's like a huge difference.
Okay.
So because we are very less, the only knowledge about caste systems to us comes from things that we have been taught since the independence era, when the caste system was just an oppressive system
Exactly.
and not really an efficient system.
Yeah. So I would like to expand on this, because the thing is, Aryan invasion theory also claims that Hinduism as a religion and caste as a system was actually implemented by Aryans, not the Dravidians. The Dravidians did not have a caste system. The entire concept of Varna. But the thing is, in the original Sanatan Dharma text, if you refer the Sanatan Dharma texts, so they don't consider caste as by birth.
Yeah.
Actions. Yeah. So caste was never by birth. Initially, caste was purely from your karma or from your actions. So
Actions.
necessarily that a Brahmin son will become a Brahmin or a Shudra son will become a Shudra.
Brahmam
Yeah.
janati iti brahmanaha. There's one
Perfect.
quote, and even the one who knows the Brahma, the cosmos, is a Brahmin. And
Perfect.
even if you refer the Buddha's words, Kamuna hove Brahmano, and all those things are mentioned in Pali. So
Right.
what he's saying is it depends upon your karma. Kamuna hove
Perfect.
kshatriya and all.
Yeah, right. So that was the thing according to the Aryan invasion theory. This system was implemented by Aryans. But
Yeah, and now
over
if
the
you
Dravid,
consider this reference of Chanakya's Arthashastra, then
exactly.
it reinforces the fact that because Chanakya does not say that the Dravidians are out of the system.
Yeah, he says
there is
Aryan.
a class. No, he says there is a class of people which
Okay.
is outside the Aryan Varna system, who are truly
Right.
slaves.
Okay.
So that does not just include outside people, it also includes the people who have been excommunicated from society, people who have
Okay.
been banished from the society. They are not even considered Shudras, because Shudra is not lower by honor or respect. It is just a lower post in an organization.
Exactly.
Ideally, it is not anything, it does not have anything relating to honor or respect. It is just you're at a higher post, you're at a lower post, that's it.
Right. Exactly. So that is why one of the things why Aryan invasion theory cannot be considered is the claim that Hinduism was brought in by the Aryan. So basically, Hindu word itself is not of any ethnic origin. It is a medium.
Right.
Although some of the references from Shankaracharya dictate that Hindu word can be found in the text, but I don't think that is really valid. Hindu was actually given to us by Persians, and
Yeah.
Persians.
they can actually be considered as Aryans because Persians were existing during the time of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. So invasion, basically, they are claiming that invasion theory happened in, rather invasion happened in 1500 BC. But Harappa and Mohenjo-daro are even older than that.
Yeah.
Harappa and Mohenjo-daro are almost 3000 to
300 BC to 1700.
exactly, and in 700,
3000 BC to 1700. Vaibhav,
yeah,
you said
3300,
300.
correct. To
yeah.
1700. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is exactly where the Aryan invasion happened in the in 1700 BCE. So if Aryan invasion happened and they brought in Hinduism, so before that there should be some kind of you can say religion or some kind of faith that was followed by
Right.
the Harappa and
The
Mohenjo-daro.
Dravidians.
But
Maybe,
yeah,
yeah,
but
maybe,
there is a trick here. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
yes.
Bhargav, Bhargav.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there is a trick here. The thing is, in Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, we do not see any form of governance. We do not see any places of worship, and we do not see any things of faith either. So
Hmm.
it might be possible that yes, Aryans did indeed bring Hinduism, and initially before that there was no kind of worship because we don't find any palaces or tombs or temples in Mohenjo-daro or Harappa.
Right. Maybe that is also because, so let's assume, ki, of course, if Dravidians were existing there, they will have a religious system because let's assume every civilization has a religious belief system because
Right.
that has been seen through all the civilizations. They have some religious belief. So in that case, let's assume Dravidians did so. And even in the Vedic times, the Vedic times that Aryans brought, even in the Vedic times, from what I have read, idol worship was very less compared to
Yeah.
yagya systems.
Right.
So it was more of a trade between gods and humans. Gods were not treated as divine, they were treated as they have better material that they can provide us. So I provide a sacrifice in the yajna, and the god provides me with something that I need. So that why there was Swaha and Tathastu. There was no, we don't find anything related to, he sat in a forest and he worshipped for 20,000 years and shit. That comes in the
Yes,
Purana.
exactly. No, asceticism thing, there were no
Right.
aspects.
Right. So, talking about that, maybe that is why there are no sites in Mohenjo-daro because there was not such as even in a yagya. If I conduct a yagya in my home, after 2 days you won't know there was a yagya in my home because it's a very mobile system. It's a very efficient system. It's not a strict system. So maybe that is why we don't find any such things, which is actually unfortunate. It might have helped us a lot.
Yeah, exactly. To determine how things have happened. So,
Yeah.
as Vaibhav has shared the screen, even you can compare the language thing. So, if you consider Aryans brought in Hinduism, and their language was Sanskrit, which is an Indo-European language, and if you consider their claim to be correct, we can actually see the difference. Even Indus script is way different, and it is completely a hieroglyphic script. There are only ideographs and there are only hieroglyphs.
Right.
There is no phonetics involved. Like you cannot see any sound that is incorporated with the symbol, which is completely reverse of Sanskrit. Sanskrit entirely worked on sound ideology. So Shruti and Smriti, oral
So
tradition itself
maybe
says that, yeah,
Sanskrit evolved a lot later than the Harappan
yeah,
civilizations.
or maybe Sanskrit was evolved, but it came later into India, which itself is what Aryan invasion theory claims. That Sanskrit did not originate in India; it was brought by the Aryans from the northern Hindu Kush mountains, and
But then,
spread all the way through Indian subcontinent. And these people and the Indus people were the real inhabitants of the land. And this was their script. And these were the people that they captured. That is the claim as per Aryan invasion theory.
oh, so these are actually Dravidian symbols and not.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Indus Valley were the indigenous people because we find these sites on the tribes, like on the banks of the river Sindhu, Saraswati, Narmada, all those things.
But again, I wanted to add the script which we are seeing. This is and this Indus Valley script as well as the Egyptian script. This is still not decoded, but we know this is a swastik and a few of the
Yeah.
symbols. So yeah, That's the thing. Like
Yeah,
it's
this
Yeah,
you just
exactly. As
told
I
me.
said, yeah. So as I said, these are hieroglyphics. So even the scripts in, I had the same paragraph today in the TOEFL exam. So there were two kinds of script. One of them was hieroglyphic, demotic, and the other was phonetic. So hieroglyphic demotic indicates that there are only symbols, but there is no sound associated with it. Whereas the second one, which is phonetic, that says that the script also has a sound. Like if we say Om and we see the symbol. So when we see the symbol of Om, we say Om. Or when we, but swastik doesn't really have a sound associated with it.
Hmm.
It's just swastik. It is a symbol.
Yeah,
We
it
call that
is
symbol
just
as swastik.
more on interpretation than definition.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So these
so
are
it
called as
would be,
hieroglyphic.
yeah, so it would be like maybe, you know, you draw a man and then you draw a square. So maybe that
Perfect.
means a sentence. The man is walking into a house. But you
Exactly
don't
what it
really
Yeah.
was.
associate any phonetics with it. It's a
Yeah,
picture memory. So
yeah,
we say a
perfect.
picture paints 1,000 words. It's the most
Perfect.
primitive form of written language, I believe.
Exactly. And many of the ancient civilizations did have hieroglyphic script itself. There was
Yeah, because it is easier to understand
easier
from
to
a
understand.
hand-drawn, because I might
Yeah.
write more as different
Hmm.
letters. But then Sanskrit is also very, what can we say, very particular compared to the Western languages, because I don't remember the exact term, but Western languages have you need to construct a sound out of 2-3 letters, whereas
Right,
in
right.
Sanskrit you vary the single letter. So in Sanskrit,
Perfect.
the sound itself is the name of the letter. The letter itself is the sound.
Exactly. So when
So
you
in
see that
Western
letter,
languages,
you immediately know what sound it is.
yeah, in case of
So,
Western languages, it is more like this letter has been given to denote the sound.
hmm.
So if any of you have read this book series called Aragon, I think Bhargav you
Yeah,
have read, right?
yeah, right.
So in that, it is a fictional book, and there is this fictional language called the true language.
True
In,
language.
yeah, in which the word. So for example, that guy has written the word Brazinger for fire. So Brazinger is not the word for fire. It is literally fire. So when you say
Hmm.
Brazinger, you control fire itself.
Right, right.
So
Similar thing. Yeah.
hieroglyphical language is something like that. You
Perfect.
literally draw the thing.
But
Hmm.
this script is not similar to the Tamilian script. It is
Exactly.
totally different. So
Right.
this is
And
something different than like Aryan or Dravidian.
yeah. So
Or
my
maybe,
maybe there is like if you consider Dravidian, even Dravidian had different tribes. So this was the maybe the northern culture of Dravid people, and there was the southern culture, which was Tamil. Because we cannot deny the fact that Tamil were non-existent during Mohenjo-daro period. There was a civilization in the Tamil region. There was Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, but there was another civilization that might have, migrated and then invaded these indigenous people, which were the Aryans. And this is the main supposition of the Aryan theory, that these were the indigenous people of India, and Aryans came from the Indo-European passage, and then they invaded the Indian subcontinent. And that is when the Sanskrit and Hinduism and all these cultures came into existence. Again, that is debatable because we do not find any traces of war or battle or real invasions in the term.
yeah,
Because the script
agree.
is not decoded, even though if
Yeah, perfect.
it was
But
written.
yeah, but then again, see, one thing about, okay, Ruchika has sent something.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can talk about it, Ruchika.
Okay, before we go to Ruchika's point, which is interesting, let me just add a point to the migration thing. Sorry, the war thing. So one, again, I reiterate my point about the fact that wars at that time would not have long-lasting effects like our wars do. So right now, if you have a bomb blast site, you have radiation and shit. I don't think they had bombs, or they had perishable weapons. So again, we won't find any tangible evidences. And second, my question was, let's assume that the script that we just saw, the hieroglyphic script, was the Dravidian script, and then the Aryans came in. And let's assume there were two different types of Dravidians. But I think it is a little difficult that one tribe developed hieroglyphic script and other tribe developed a phonetic script, which is a
Exactly.
much more intricate and detailed. You need
Yeah,
higher brain function for a phonetic script.
exactly.
And Tamil is very phonetically oriented. It's very
Yeah,
detailed.
yeah,
Even a
that is what
proper form would
exactly.
take higher brain functioning.
Exactly, that is what they're using as a defense. That there was a culture before the invasion. That was indigenous
Was
culture.
advanced.
Yeah, along with Mohenjo-daro, and it was advanced in the sense it was more, you can say, culturally advanced. And so that is where the doubt of Richaga comes into question. So she's talking about a matriarchal system before migration. So yeah, the thing is, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were not actually matriarchal or patriarchal. There was an egalitarian structure. There was no difference between matriarchy and patriarchy because there was no form of governance itself. There was no king, there was no queen, there was no government. They lived as a community, and it was a completely egalitarian structured society. So man and women were treated as literally equals. It was not like, there was no feminism kind of thing that they should have equal opportunity. They were literally treated as equal beings, only with different biological sex.
How,
That's it.
how do we know there was not a form of governance?
Yeah, so for any form of governance, there should be a military, and for any form of governance, that should be a citadel or some kind of a protective
There
structure.
was a citadel.
So the citadel itself, it means that that was considered to be the hub of the entire city, and that is
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah, and there might have been evidences that that was actually where the water harvesting system started. So there must be a control for the sewage system. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro had intricate sewage systems. So that is where citadel was the functioning unit, you can call it central processing unit, and from there everything had happened. But the thing is, there is no evidence of any form of governance. Like there was no king to Mohenjo-daro. They lived as a community, and even the masonry or the mason work, as can be seen from the archaeological facts that I've gathered, you can see an egalitarian structure because even the paintings itself dictate that both men and women did the mason thing. So yeah, we were sharing some screen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the sewage system that I've
Sewage.
So it was really a well-structured society. Call it. It was literally a society. I have no idea if it was kind of a democratic state where people
But
elect the chief,
so
but
now,
Actually, the thing is, like, sorry to interrupt. So I have researched about this, and
okay,
in Citadel there was a priest. So there was a head priest. I don't know what they are worshipping, but there was no governance, as Bhargav stated. But there was a kind of a administration. So priest used to administer the city, and after that priest, it was kind of kind like a gram panchayat, like the senior
right,
people of that community will give their
we,
opinion, and those who want to follow, they will follow that.
yeah, that is
right,
there.
exactly. We have
Talking
even
about
found the idol of that priest. I mean, if you remember the
Yeah.
Mohenjo-daro man or the Harappa man, there is an idol which has been found. The
Yeah.
dancing girl and the priest, both of them have been found.
Yes,
so
I have their images. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
talking
we know it.
about
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong. The bricks used in it's a brickwork construction, right? The
Yeah.
bricks used in construction of Mohenjo-daro. So they are all of more or less uniform size, right?
Mm.
So that means there has to be a central agency that is maintaining this, because a scale that big and you have to build
Right.
everything in the uniform. That means there was some form of central, maybe not so rigid, but you will always have a hierarchy in group structures,
Right,
because there
of
will
course.
always be haves and have
Mm.
nots, not in terms of true economy, but in terms of some are relatively weak compared to others. Like all lions are capable of killing a man, but one or deer, but one lion compared to other lion can be relatively weak.
Yeah.
So
How?
you will by
Yeah.
default have a hierarchy.
Yeah, so hierarchy might have been present, but I mean, when we consider governance, we consider like a kingship, and there is a royal lineage, and there are bloodlines, and the king is
Yeah,
elected
but
by
again,
succession.
that is a very sophisticated form of governance. Maybe it was a
Mm.
primitive form of governance
Okay.
where, because the population was also not that much that you
Right.
would need a very defined code governance.
Right. Right.
So maybe it was a very primitive form of governance where you don't, and considering the fact that they were Aryans, let's
Mm.
consider the fact that they were Aryans. Let's consider two scenarios: one where they are invaders, one where they are indigenous.
Mm.
Considering they are invaders, from whence they have come, they know the path from which they have come, and they know that there won't be any other attack coming from that side at least, because they know the kind of hardships that
Yeah.
they had to cross to come. So even if someone dares attack from that side, which is implausible actually, they would easily defeat that person. And if the Dravidians choose to attack, they were still having the upper hand because they had now captured these cities, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And even if they were indigenous, then there was, there was not a true threat to the cities as such, because the three cities are the only major cities. We don't find cities all over India which would
Right, right.
compete with these kingdoms or attack these kingdoms or compete for resources.
Mm.
So, considering the fact that the parameter for their being a government system is
Right,
a
right.
military power, I think that parameter can be relaxed in case of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, the Indus civilizations, because there was not a strict need for military. Maybe there was a
Exactly.
basic defensive need. Ki maybe if an animal attacks, maybe if a elephant runs into the agricultural fields, that kind of military assistance might be needed.
Yeah.
But true military that you need to fight another kingdom, I don't think that was necessary.
Yeah, exactly. Because there were, I mean, those kingdoms were actually really in the primitive stage. They were basically living as a community or a tribal people.
Yeah, it
Not
was just a
quite
very
advanced to, yeah. But I don't understand
amazing.
one thing. Yeah, okay, how could they manage to build sewage systems? Like, if they were that primitive, but they had a sophisticated manner to manage the sewage systems. And even if you consider, Vaibhav, could you just scroll down to that Pashupati image?
Yeah. Okay, just a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe
So that is
population
really,
was less, so it was easy to, uniform everything.
huh, that
More
Maybe it
might
was
be
the
population, more
kind of
possible.
diversity.
primitive Soviet Union.
The thing is, I just wanted
Yeah,
to
exactly.
ask I just wanted to answer the Ruchika's question. So in
Hmm.
the afternoon, I had a call with my friend, and she's preparing for UPSC. So she gave me few inputs, there's a research, and in Latin America, it has been observed that we used to think that during previous days, earlier days, men used to go for hunting, but in Latin America, that civilization, so women used to go for hunting. So that has been observed over there. And even in case of Egyptian civilization, so whatever roles which we have, so during those times, so they were different, which we have.
Okay.
Even in some cases of wars as well. So like even today, which we see that during earlier times, like around 300 to 400 years ago, so men also used to wear, and even during those times, men used to wear the ornaments, but today which we don't. So as far as we have evolved, like considering the religious, political aspects, so roles are so roles are differed.
So yeah, you are talking about matrilineal system, not matriarchal system. Matrilineal and matriarchal is different. So she's asking about matriarchal. So the thing is, yeah. So there have been many instances where matriarchy shifted to patriarchy, but predominantly in most of the kingdoms, even in India as well as the outside world, patriarchy was the key role, because even biologically, if you consider, men are stronger than women in all species, not just in humans. Even in the as lion's pride, I'm told about lion's pride. So in lions, the primary role of a male is to protect the herd, and that is why it's considered superior to a female, and that is also a form of patriarchy. So patriarchy is existing in all kinds of cultures, in all kinds of kingdom, not just in India, in the entire
With
world.
small
What
exceptions.
about UK?
Yeah.
They have queen.
Yeah. So that is much later thing. Before they had a king.
See, another thing about
Yeah.
matriarchy is,
Hmm.
so in Nagaland areas, the tribal areas, matriarchy is the prime mode of governance in the tribal
And they
areas.
have polyandry, and this has
Yeah,
been this right has been protected under India's constitution in
Hmm.
Naga
yeah,
framework. If you see
yeah,
polyandry, like one woman can have multiple husbands. In
Okay.
Nagaland,
like
it's a
property.
practice followed by Naga tribes
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Right. Right.
we
under
think that
Special
because,
Marriage Act.
right, right. But we think that because it was matriarchy, it is like, truly women have the power, the kind of power that men have in a patriarchal system.
Hmm.
But so I am in this book club, and we were discussing, a member of ours was discussing about this book, which was an autobiography by a woman from Nagaland. And she has written that people outside think we have a matriarchal system, and that feminists admire us so much because we have a matriarchal system.
Hmm.
But actually, she said, because we are a matriarchal system, the things like, in a patriarchal system, a girl shouldn't go out of the house alone. I'm talking about extreme patriarchal system. Okay. So she said similar thing happened to us in a matriarchal system also, because we were like, because now you have to hold a position of power, you can't go out of the house randomly. You can't wear this because you are going to lead the people. You can't meet
Exactly.
with random boys because you are to marry someone suitable for a queen and stuff. So uh, so in that case, it is again a form of reverse psychology in case of patriarchy. So anyway,
Yeah.
got a way. So we have to be very careful when we say a culture is matriarchal or patriarchal.
Yeah.
Right.
The
Right.
matriarchal, not a culture, but system is seen in elephants.
Hmm.
Elephants have a truly matriarchal system where the matriarch, the oldest female of the herd, leads the group, and the male, once they reach a suitable age, are thrown out of the herd. And then the males roam around as nomads. They don't have a herd. They only catch up with the herd during the mating season. It's literally like the females are saying, "You are there to give us babies." What patriarchy did to females, like, you are there to
Exactly.
make babies. Elephants did to males. You are there to give us the babies. Now go
Exactly.
away.
Even in our history, like if you see and study the Mughal dynasty, so the daughter of Iltutmish, who is Razia Sultana, so even she was the only female. So there has been instance where the female monarch is there in every tribe and every civilization.
Right.
Right. Right. Yeah. So matrilineal systems and matriarchal systems were there in some places, but
Also, sorry,
regarding,
but
yeah.
I have to leave now. So, like, you guys continue.
Okay. Sure.
I'll
Sure.
catch up with you later. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So
Right.
it was fun discussing. Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye. So yeah, matriarchal system was followed by many of the civilizations, but I'm not sure about Mohenjo-daro or Harappa because they basically followed an egalitarian structure. There was no matriarchy or patriarchy. There was no form of kingdom itself. It was a community, and this kingdom system may have come from the Aryan invasion concept, and that is why they are proposing that if your civilization had an egalitarian structure, where did this egalitarian structure get lost? Or where did matriarchy or patriarchy come into existence? So that is one of the proponents of Aryan invasion theory. But then again, I just found a paper. I'll just share it. Maybe
Yeah.
we can end it with this thing, the recording thing. Yeah. So can you see the image? Yeah. So the initial study which we discussed about the genetic theory. So even in this, they have found some of the 2 to 3% of the unknown hominid source. So they are claiming that the people from Java and Sumatra, or they have even mentioned the tribes. So these tribes actually have a pre-genetic code, which is even before the out of Africa route. So it is not really possible, and they have the similar dialects as the languages are similar to Indus Valley, but their genetic code is even before of the Africans. So this can actually help to prove that Aryan invasion theory or Hinduism was not brought in by Aryans, it was completely indigenous. And there have been many references in Vedas itself that talk about lineages, that talk about the tribes and how the tribes have progressed, entire family trees. And these family trees can be traced back to even these islands. So this is one of the most, you can say, plausible defense against the Aryan invasion theory. And this entire research paper is available. I will share the link on the group. And this is a really interesting research which is coming.
Yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to add one point what Bhargav said, that there are differences between the culture of Aryans and Dravidians. If we consider this theory to be true for the sake of argument, but we see that as far as the religion is concerned, so there are few differences, like who is elder brother, like is he a Murugan or Kartikeya or Ganesha? It differs. And there was also, we were discussing about Buddha to be the ninth incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So differences are there, but
Yeah.
still the religion is same.
Yeah.
And even if we consider the period of Adi Shankaracharya and that thing, so even Vedas and all those scriptures, so religion is common. So why religion is common? And if we consider that Aryans imposed that religion, so why Dravidians are following more? Why they are more religious
Exactly.
towards this rather than our
Right.
culture? So,
Yeah, so that is a good defense that Hinduism actually evolved in India. It was not a byproduct of a invading civilization. And yeah, there have been many instances which do dictate that Sanskrit did evolve in India and Vedic civilization did evolve in India, and it is not a byproduct of Indo-European invasion. And Europeans actually have nothing to do with Sanskrit language. I mean, Persians and Arabians were in between the European people. We have the Greece and we have the Roman thing, but Persian and Arabian were in between, and then we have the Indian subcontinent. So if it was about invasion, the Persian and the Arabian influence would have been more instead of a language like Sanskrit, which is purely an Indian made. There have been references from Persian thing, and that is not what we see in the Aryan invasion theory. They are claiming Europeanization of the Sanskrit. So that is why, again, this is a defense which stands against the Aryan invasion theory. Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one thing I just wanted to state that European languages like English, so they are more similar to the Latin than Sanskrit and
Exactly.
even Hebrew. Yeah.
So there is a group of languages in Europe called as Germanic languages. Those have roots in Sanskrit. If that's what.
Yeah. So maybe the northern root thing might have happened to Sanskrit, but right now we discussed about Indus Valley civilization, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and how they had a totalitarian structure, and their script, like the Indus script, was completely hieroglyphic. There was no sound or phonetic involved in it. I mean, when you see swastik doesn't have a sound associated with it. It's completely symbol. So,
even in the case of fish, which
exactly.
is used to denote the stars.
Right. So it is basically hieroglyphic. There is no sound or phonetics associated with it. But Sanskrit, on the other hand, is not at all hieroglyphic. It is completely based on phonetics. So that is why there was a discrepancy that if Indus Valley developed, you can say, a language called Sanskrit, their script was completely hieroglyphic, and then they developed a language which is not at all hieroglyphic. And even the script is different, like Devanagari or even Brahmi script, that is completely different from Indus script. So why didn't they just create a language from the script that they had instead of creating an entirely new language? That is, of course, if we consider that Sanskrit evolved from Indus Valley.
So what I have heard is Sanskrit evolved from settlements on the Ganga and not in the Indus Valley.
Okay.
So maybe that's the reason, because the rivers on the eastern side of India are more mentioned in Indian scriptures as being originating from head of Shiva or given as a gift by Vishnu. So those rivers, Brahmaputra, for example, so those rivers are more accounted for than the eastern rivers, than the western rivers. Yeah.
Right.
I would like to disagree to this, because
Okay.
they treat all the rivers like, if you see, there's a very popular verse which we say, Gangesha Yamunesha Eva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Yasmimshi Sannidhav Kuru. So if you see, like, Ganga Yamuna is also mentioned, which flows from Himalayas. Basically all the rivers except Narmada in this verse, so they originated, even Godavari, so they are originated from Himalayas. So although except these two, so the eastern and western, like last time the discussion which we had, so they are considered to be the one entity, because Brahmaputra is also origin from Manas Sarovar Lake. Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, Bias, Sindhu and Saraswati, they are also from Himalayan rivers. And even if you go to the Uttarakhand, like Kedarnath and Badrinath, so they are having Mandakini and Alaknanda. So all these rivers are North Indian plains. So all these rivers are from Himalayas.
Right.
Yes. No, I was saying the eastern part of it. So why I was saying that was Sanskrit might not have developed in Indus Valley. It developed in Ganga's Valley.
So from Tamil culture. As a
no, Vedic culture and Tamil culture are very different, right? I mean, Vedic culture has no scriptures similar to Tamil, at least in the form of notations. So these are completely different notations. There are 3 types of notations. If we find, Indus Valley has its own, which was never preserved. Yeah, it was. I think we don't have any books
No,
from
it is not
Indus Valley.
yet.
We just
Yeah,
have
it is not yet deciphered.
we just have carvings, right? Carvings and seals. We don't have anything on paper. Whereas in Tamil as well as Vedic ancestries, we have written pages with the script.
Exactly.
Tadpatra, Bhojapatra,
Yeah.
over this.
And
Yeah.
and if you consider these scripts, they are not just hieroglyphic; they are demotic as well. There is even sound associated with those scripts, which is not the case in Indus Valley. But then, so in that case, maybe Indus Valley comes as the Aryan theory. Maybe like were Indus Valley itself the Aryans, and these people were the Dravidians, because there's a difference in script as well. So maybe Indus Valley civilization was the, I mean, they were the Aryans, and Tamil culture and the Sanskrit people were actually the Dravidians. This is what we might include. Okay. Mhm. Right.
Yeah. So the thing is like I just wanted to add over here is, yeah, so river part which we discussed, and there are a few things like Aryan theory of invasion which led to the end of the Indus Valley civilization. So this is one reason, but I have jotted down few more reasons. So if you want, we can, I can share the slide.
Yeah.
Okay, uh, just a second. Okay, so yeah, so whatever I have read, I have just jotted the points. So how the Indus Valley civilization ended? The first thing is climate change, and Saraswati River started drying up during 1900 BC. So this is one thing. Like when the river gets disappeared or dried, so they have to move. And if you also say that even this region is flooded, that flood might also have occurred during that time. So this is one reason, since it's a huge network of rivers like Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, Chenab, and all those rivers. And it is also believed to said that few scholars agree that monsoon started moving eastwards, the winds. So this is one reason. And it is also said that during 1800 BC, climate become cooler and drier, and tectonic event also occurred during the same time. So
Yeah,
this
this
is
point is
the,
important. I mean, the
yeah,
later point, Harappans may have migrated to Ganga basin. That is where Sanskrit again evolved. So yeah, this is
yeah.
the link where Harappans might be considered as the founders of Sanskrit, because if this is true, and Sanskrit evolved from Ganga basin. So Indus Valley people were indeed the inventors of Sanskrit.
But I have one question for Prayag. The thing is, like, if we consider that Vedas and the Sanskrit literature got evolved in Ganga basins, like North Indian plains, then what is the geographical location of Rigveda, Yajurveda, and Samaveda? Like, so this is in Punjab and in that region where Indus
So
Valley civilization was there.
yeah, so whatever you are saying, the Rig Veda, all
Yeah,
types of Vedas, they were compiled, right?
yeah,
So compilation came after the civilization revolution had already occurred. So tracing the earlier stages of language won't give us any insights into that, because you can compile all the results together when you have a civilization who lives at a place. So you will have to look at kingdoms. Okay, so early kingdoms which sanctioned compiling these Vedas. Okay, all of these Vedas aren't just social texts.
Right.
They had some use. They were used in governance. They were used in medicine. They were used in agriculture, whatever. And they were compiled by state-sponsored compilers. So
yeah.
we'll have to look into the kingdoms who did this, and that's how we can pinpoint where maybe all the authors came to the kingdom to compile all these things, but we will have to look into something like that. which
Yeah.
kingdoms sanctioned it.
Yeah, I have one more sub question to this. Like, if we agree that the compilation was done by one person, so so what I believe is whosoever have compiled these Vedas, so he's the one kingdom or one person. Because from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, there are many pathshalas and for the dharma peeths and all those things.
Correct.
So that Vedas, if a person is reciting in Jammu and Kashmir, even 1000 years ago, and the one who is reciting those Vedas in the southern parts of India, so these are one and the same, not even like the Karnataki music and North Indian music, so they are different. There are gharanas and the way they pronounce the musics and this is different, but in case of Vedas it is one and the same exactly.
Yeah, it is uniform.
Yeah,
It
it is
is uniform
uniform.
throughout India.
So
So
why it is uniform?
that's what gives us a proof that some central entity compiled all these things and distributed.
Right.
Yeah.
There is no other way, or else we would have different interpretations of it.
Right.
There might still be interpretations of Rig Veda, but the Rig Veda itself has to be just
Shruti.
one set of just
Shruti
one
is
set of.
conserved.
Yeah,
So we can
interpretations are
consider it.
different.
Yeah, so we can consider it to be like journals, trusted journals, which
Right.
can be circulated once they are compiled by a trusted seal, behind a trusted seal of a, let's say, a
Mark of
bright rishi.
authenticity.
Yeah,
Right.
for authenticity, correct. Or else people won't believe it, right?
Right.
So you can't just hand out papers and say, this is word of God, follow my God.
Yeah.
You can actually. That is what
Because
Christians
the
did.
thing is, yeah, they
Yeah.
do say these
I
Abrahamic
recently got a just going off topic for a minute.
yeah.
I recently got a pamphlet in university, and one of my friends also got a lecture on how he should accept Jesus and everything else is false, and how we are possessed by devils if we don't live under the rule of son of God.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that is true. So that you can indeed go out selling pamphlets.
Right.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, as we say that Veda comes from a Sanskrit root word which is Vida means knowledge.
Vidya.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, Vidya is also from the same thing. So yeah.
So
Yeah, so
exactly.
we
So
should look into this possibility of who compiled these Vedas together, because we have them, right? We have them compiled together. They are not all of the shloks form into a single classification, but
Yeah.
when we put it together, we get a Veda. So
Yeah.
there are I think 108 Upanishads, right? And 4 main Vedas and many more scriptures. So someone must have compiled all these works together.
yeah.
It's
So
not a
according
work
to
of a single person.
exactly. So according to Vedic scriptures itself, as Upanishads and Brahmanas, these three things come under Shruti. So Shruti
Okay.
means which is narrated by God, and that is why there is a uniformity in it, and that is why
Okay.
it's Shruti.
Word
And
of
the
God.
later part, exactly, it is the word of God which is called Shruti. It was heard by the sages, and hence it was called Shruti. And later the sages wrote their own texts, which are called Smriti. So Manu Smriti.
Smriti.
So that comes
So what they interpreted.
exactly. So that
is
that
Smriti.
came under Smriti or Samhita. So some come under Smriti, like Manu Smriti, and Vedas, Upanishads, and Brahmanas come under Shruti. So if there is a dispute between, there is a religious dispute, the Shruti hold greater importance than the Smritis. So the
Okay. Shruti outranks
exactly.
Smritis.
So Shruti should be considered for solving religious disputes. If it goes above the, you can say, problem of Smritis. So that is why there be a uniformity, because it was literally the words of God. They were given by Vishnu. Some say Lord by Lord Brahma to the 7 sages. But when the writing system was invented, and I have no idea when they got converted into writing system, but the oral has been passed on by Shruti and Smriti, and that is actually the real tradition of India.
Yeah, so the thing is like if you ask a scholar from Jammu or Kashmir or say from Orissa or from Kanyakumari, so to recite the Rigveda, so he will start from the Agni Sukta, Om Agni Mihe Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Rutmejam. So this is same everywhere. So this
From
is
the
which is
start, yeah,
very unique. Yeah,
exactly,
interpretations may differ, but chronology and everything is same. Like if you,
same.
yeah, so
Shruti is the same, right? So Shruti, there is, I mean, there should have been a really good compilation thing for the Shrutis because Smrutis keep on varying, but Shruti remains fixed and
Mhm.
it is uniform in the entire India. Although the Smruti thing later evolved, so the Manusmriti was never really a law thing. Manusmriti wasn't a law book. I don't know why they burned it, but the thing is, Manusmriti was not. There were two schools of law, Mitakshara and Dayabhaga,
ha,
and that is indeed taught in law. I mean, because in
Shastra.
exactly. So that is taught today even in legal schools. Like for LLB, literally for the degree of LLB, these two schools are taught. Mitakshara and Dayabhaga were the original schools of thought where the law
Mhm.
were decided. And we have indeed adopted those laws into our modern constitution. So our constitution is
Okay.
entirely adopted from British. It is partly British adopted. The preamble is from British constitution, but we have succession, which is based on Hindu succession or Hindu Marriage Act or Hindu Inheritance Act.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hindu Code Bill.
Exactly. So that is completely derived from Mitakshara and Dayabhaga, and all the other criminal and civil laws are from British, adopted from the British system. But again,
Mhm.
the difference. Mitakshara was followed by the northern kingdoms, and Dayabhaga was followed by the southern kingdoms. And Dayabhaga was kind of woman oppressive. Mitakshara was more free to the women. So that is why there was again a difference, and we have adopted Mitakshara more into our constitution because we should be fair to women.
Yeah.
So again,
I mean,
this
it's not upon us to decide.
yeah, exactly.
This
There
is
should be
much,
egalitarian structure.
Yeah, they
yeah,
are equal.
this is
So
much
that is
better than Sharia law, because the thing is like, yeah, as Bhargav said, that these laws are taught in LLB. Even Sharia is also taught
yeah,
for them. But the thing is like in Sharia, it is said that, let's say if you are a judge and you are hearing a case, in Sharia it is mentioned a woman's testimony is
Yeah.
half that of a man.
exactly.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and we have entire act on Mohammedan succession.
yeah,
And so the real problem arises if a Hindu marries a if a Hindu man marries a Muslim woman. So that is why it becomes a very heated debate because the
yeah.
woman belongs to Sharia law because she is a Muslim woman and the man belongs to Hindu Succession Act.
Mhm.
It should get both of these laws and then becomes a really difficult
So
kind of
what we
thing.
should actually come up with is a uniform
Yeah,
Uniform civil code.
uniform civil code.
that is
Everyone
the
is yeah, everyone
perfect.
is equal in the eye of the law. It should be.
Exactly.
I mean, they should be. We are way past religions now.
Yeah. So
So
that is why even this difference between Mitakshar and Dayabhaga, even that is reflected in the philosophy. Like
mhm.
Aryans migrated from the north and they were more free towards women. They involved Mitakshara school, whereas Dayabhaga was predominantly the Tamilian culture, the orthodox culture of the south. And there is a difference in the schools of law. And there was no correlation between, like it is not like a central committee was involved and then there was a difference branching of things. There was no dichotomy. They
Mhm.
separately in two regions of India.
Also, one more aspect of this theory of someone came and invaded. Uh, we didn't discuss about the skin color.
Hmm.
So,
Exactly.
because of the latitudes and because of the amount of sun, amount of daylight
Hmm.
a particular geographical area gets
Right.
throughout the year, the pigmentation changes. Okay,
Exactly.
so people in Africa or people in southern Southeast Asia or
Hmm.
even in the southern subcontinent of Asia,
Hmm.
that is India, we find darker skins because it is a mechanism against UV radiation. And
Melanin
as
pigment.
yes, and as we move on upwards towards the north, it gets lighter. The skin gets lighter and lighter
Exactly.
because we don't need the pigment that much.
Right.
So the cultural divide between the colors could be
Hmm.
entirely latitude based.
Exactly. It is rather based because we find the people from European region to be more
Mhm.
as compared to us,
Correct. Correct.
brown people.
Even in US, the actual even in the Northern American subcontinent, Mexicans are dark colored, have dark colored skins, but the Native Americans, Cherokees, they are light colored.
Red Indians.
Exactly.
Yeah, Red Indians who painted their skin red according to their tribal traditions, and that's why they are called Red Indians. They
Right.
had their own costumes, they had their own kingdoms,
Feathers.
their own clans. Yes, feathers.
Yeah.
And they had light skin. They still have. I mean, the descendants of they aren't completely annihilated. Cherokees still live in the northern subcontinent, and they are fair skinned. So the reason has to be because of the latitude.
Native Americans.
Yeah, Native Americans.
If you like, even Dwayne Johnson is actually a Polynesian. I mean, he belongs to the Red Indian kind of. He's Red Indian, I'm not sure, but even his own skin color is not exact. People used to consider him as black, but he's not of the black descent. He's a Polynesian, similar to Jason Momoa. Even he's of the
But also, one more thing is there is still a difference between skin color of European whites and Indian whites.
Yes, right.
European whites are more predominantly white because they have cloudy skies. Again, this all comes to UV radiation. The skin color all comes down to UV radiation. So we can think of the invasion or any other ideas in that manner. So we can try to find skin pigments, because even in China, where they are even at lower latitudes than Europe, but they are fairer because of the clouds. Okay, so China has a large
Tibet.
cloud cover all over the
Very fair people. Yeah.
all around the year, so they get lower amount of sunlight than the Europeans, and hence they are more fairer. So we should look into something like that.
Yeah, that is.
We need more experts on the panel.
Yeah, one more
Who can
thing.
talk about genetics.
Yeah, one more thing. There are few microbiologists which were added during the introduction I saw. So I just wanted to ask one question to Grill. Can a civilization and tribe coexist together? Because even in India, we have tribes as well. We also have civilization. So how?
So as long as the civilization doesn't get greedy, they can coexist.
So Indus Valley was there. That was a civilization, Indus Valley civilization. But there were tribes surrounding that civilization. In short, even in our scriptures, we consider ourselves as Aryan or Dravid, any of the two. But the thing is, there is mention of another kind of people called as Mleka. Referred to as outsiders. Malech.
Who don't live in a civilization.
Like during 300-400 years ago, actually Malech is a word referred for Muslims. People used to refer that. Yeah.
So they call us Ghafirs, we call them
Malech.
Right. But even, I mean, in some of the references they even mention about Yavanas, which means Ionians. So people from Ionia. So they were called as Yavanas. And that can be found in Dasharatnya. I mean, they were in the battle of Dasharatnya, King Sudas. So he mentions about Ionians or Yavanas. And they had different skin color, as Prayag mentioned. So which indicates that they indeed come. But I have no idea why they came all the way from Greece to help King Sudas.
Fertile lands.
That might be possible. Because our Indian subcontinent was way more fertile than Persian and everything.
Being a tropical country.
Tropical country, fertile,
and
that's
a lot
why
of
highly
rivers.
populated.
Yes.
And we talked about the Narmada thing, right? So Narmada and Godavari become the exception. That is exactly where we have found the oldest hominins. So there was a civilization, indeed, there was skeletons, we have skeletons. And that is the oldest skeletons, like even that during the the original inhabitants. And these inhabitants found in Narmada, they are both similar. So which means there was a civilization.
Different strain of humans.
Same thing, exactly. But which evolved differently, geographically.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to state, as we are discussing migration, so when Israel broke up from Jerusalem, so when Jews had to flee Israel, So there were three kinds of Jews. One is Cochin Jew, Bene Israeli Jew, and Baghdadi Jew, respectively. So one tribe went to, they were separated. One tribe went to Baghdad, Iraq. Second went to Cochin, which is
Right.
India, southern part of India. And third, Bene Israeli Jew, they were in Konkan. So even that
Yeah, I've heard
community
about.
is also
Yeah.
observed in
Right.
Konkan, and few of them
Yes,
say
yes.
that even they are converted to Hinduism. Few of them
There is
still
a
exist.
so there is an interesting anecdote about that. Have you heard about ice cream cola?
Yes.
Have you ever went to Konkan and had an ice cream cola?
Cola.
So yeah, so it is a drink which was developed by a Jew in Konkan itself, and he lives in and around Alibag. We have went to his factory. He his family manufactures everything there. His descendants came to, as you said, his
Yeah,
descendants have
Bene
been there
Israeli.
for centuries, and we went to his headquarters, and I have a photo. I can share that.
Definitely,
Their
you can
history is,
share. This is
yeah,
very interesting.
there is all the history of how their brand was built in the war era, and how they traveled over here. It is very interesting. I'll share that photo.
Yes, please. And one more thing, I just wanted to add that Bene Israeli, Bene in Hebrew means the son of Israel.
Okay.
Right. Right. So descendants of Israel.
Yeah, descendants of Israel.
Okay. It
So
can
did they
indicate
come
descendants.
via sea routes?
Can be, because in Baghdad they could have went through the land route, but what about Cochin and the Konkan?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
sea route was there, and 2000 years ago.
Yeah, India's maritime history actually does mention about ships. Not, yeah, they do mention about 2000 years ago, but they were rafts, not ships. Like
Even the
yeah,
Parsi
Yeah,
minority also landed in Gujarat via ships.
yeah.
yeah.
So
One more very interesting story I just wanted to add, because we are discussing this. So if you see the community of Dawoodi Bohra, they are Shia Ismaili Muslims, right? So they were migrated from Egypt to Iraq, Iraq to Yemen. Then from Yemen they came to Rajasthan and Gujarat coast. Okay, so they
Okay.
came over here, and the Dawoodi Bohras which you see, like they are closely associated with Narendra Modi. And if you see the Sayyidina Mufaddal Saifuddin, Sayyidina Burhanuddin, so they are the community leaders. So when these Shias originally came to Rajasthan, so Sayyidina Burhanuddin, so basically, he was a Hindu Brahmin. He took a diksha from that community. He got converted, and he's
Oh,
preaching this thing. So even
right, right.
that thing is also observed. So even we are converting and accepting that ideology for any political or any religious aspects as well. So this is the
Right, right.
example, and this has been verified. If you see Wikipedia, so there are references that he was born into a Brahmin family in
okay.
Rajasthan. When Shia Ismailis came, he took a diksha from that, and then he started preaching. So such references are there. So if if anyone wants to add something, then we can add, or I can stop the recording, so
Yeah,
we can
I mean,
discuss
if
informal.
yeah,
Yeah, I think we can stop the recording for this
Okay,
session.
so with everyone's consent, I will
yeah, sure.
stop the recording. I guess Jaideep has a question.
Okay.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, if we can discuss over this, then I will stop the recording.
The early Vedic literature describes not a human invasion into the area, but a fundamental restructuring of indigenous society. Either Aryans could have mixed up and lived with peace, or as their Indo-European root word "ar" suggests, noble or superior. Their rules introduced caste system to maintain control. Okay. Okay, so he is saying that the Aryans who came here uh, brought the caste system with them. If I'm not interpreting it wrongly. Okay, so in summary, I would like to summarize at the end. So in summary, we have looked for genetic and linguistics. These were the two main focuses we had today. And we also looked at the development of Vedas and how they could have been developed not in Indus Valley but in Ganges civilization. We also looked at the skin color and how it can give us some insights into whether the invasion was really happening. And at the end, I think we can safely conclude that we need more data. But the data which we have right now heavily favors that that the invasion never happened. It favors it tilts in that direction. Of course, there might be some other discovery, and the balance can tilt back. But for now, we can assume, or we have enough data to assume that Aryan invasion could be a myth to impose social hierarchy in the society based on, let's say, skin color. And yeah, that could be the conclusion of today's discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And the theory which we started discussing from the very beginning as we introduced the topic. So Sir Mortimer's theory of Aryan invasion, his specific the way he claimed those 37 skeletons as they were after the Harappan civilization. So his theory is false, which we can conclude. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. So I will stop the recording.